Financial hardship isn't the end. It's the place where God begins to reveal His power. When we walk through financial hardship, it's easy to believe that God's provision has slowed down or stopped altogether. But the truth is, God's provision doesn't move according to the rise and fall of our bank accounts. His provision flows even in seasons of lack, often in ways we can't see at first. Sometimes the hardest part is that His help doesn't always show up in the form we expected. We want immediate answers, instant deposits, doors that swing wide open the moment we pray. And yet God often chooses the slower, quieter miracles, the ones that form us before they free us, because He's not just trying to pay a bill, He's trying to build a believer. He's shaping something inside us that's stronger than the setback, deeper than the fear, and more valuable than any financial relief. There are moments when it feels like everything is shrinking. Income, opportunities, options, and the pressure makes you question if you've done something wrong or if God has forgotten you. But scarcity is not a sign of God's absence. It's a stage for His faithfulness. In the seasons when resources dry up, God is not withdrawing. He's preparing. Sometimes He's redirecting us to new paths we would have never considered unless the old ones closed. Sometimes He's teaching us to depend on Him in a way we never have before. And sometimes He's protecting us from something we didn't even know was coming. Provision isn't always about money. It's about wisdom, about timing, about people who show up at just the right moment, about strength you didn't know you could carry, about favor that shifts the impossible. God's provision can be the idea that suddenly makes sense, the opportunity that falls into place, the peace that steadies you when everything else feels unstable. And often He provides in layers, first the endurance, then the clarity, then the breakthrough. Even when nothing seems to be moving on the outside, something is always working in your favor behind the scenes. God has a way of turning scarcity into testimony, fear into confidence, and waiting into preparation. So don't confuse delay with denial. Don't mistake silence for absence. God's provision is not limited by your current situation. It is shaped by His unwavering ability to make a way exactly when the way needs to appear. And when it does, you'll look back and say, He was providing for me the entire time. Faith is often talked about like it's something we use only when everything is calm and predictable, but the truth is that faith grows best in the soil of financial challenge. Hardship has a way of exposing what we trust, what we fear, and what we cling to for security. When money feels tight and the pressure builds, that's when faith stops being an idea and becomes a lifeline. It becomes the seed you plant, even when you're not sure how long it will take to grow or what it will grow into. And that's the powerful thing about faith. It doesn't need perfect conditions to take root. It just needs a heart willing to believe that God is still working, even when the numbers don't add up. Financial struggle forces us to confront the uncomfortable tension between what we see and what we believe. It pushes us to decide whether our trust rests in our income, our plans, or in the God who can multiply a little into more than enough. Sometimes we think the challenge is sent to break us, but in reality, it's there to build us. It's in these tight seasons that we learn resilience, discipline, and a deeper dependence on God's voice over the noise of worry. We learn to pray differently, not out of fear, but out of expectation. We learn to listen more carefully because every moment feels significant, and we learn to surrender the illusion that we were in control in the first place. When faith becomes your seed, you start responding differently to pressure. Instead of panicking at every setback, you begin to look for where God might be positioning you. Instead of assuming the worst, you begin to anticipate the ways He might show up. And even when the situation hasn't changed yet, you start feeling a quiet strength rise in your spirit, a strength that doesn't come from the outside, but from the God who is working on the inside. It's what hardship does. It forces the seed of faith to crack open, to stretch, to push through the dirt that once buried it. And one day, what started as a silent act of trust becomes visible fruit. Proof that faith planted in difficulty grows into hope, clarity, and breakthrough. Because sometimes the struggle isn't there to stop you, it's there to grow you. There's a moment in every financial struggle when the worry becomes louder than reason. Your mind starts running loops. What if this doesn't work out? What if the bills stack higher than the solutions? What if this season lasts longer than you can hold on? Worry has a way of convincing you that you're fighting alone, that you have to figure everything out right now, that you're somehow falling behind. But peace arrives the moment we stop trying to control every outcome and choose to surrender the weight we were never meant to carry. It's not a surrender of responsibility. It's a surrender of fear. It's releasing the idea that everything depends on you and choosing instead to trust the God who has never once stopped being faithful. When you surrender worry, something shifts inside you. You stop rehearsing the worst-case scenario and start remembering who's walking with you. You begin to see that peace isn't found in having all the answers. It's found in knowing the one who does. Financial hardship doesn't disappear overnight, but the grip of anxiety starts to loosen. Your thoughts get clearer. Your heart gets steadier. The noise quiets just enough for God's whisper to reach you again. And sometimes that single whisper, "I'm with you," is enough to change the entire atmosphere of your mind. Peace isn't pretending everything is fine. It's understanding that even when everything isn't fine, you're still held. It's the confidence that God's timing is still perfect, even when your timeline feels threatened. It's the awareness that you don't need to chase every answer, because the right answers will find you when you're aligned with His presence. Peace has a way of anchoring you when uncertainty tries to pull you under. It reminds you that fear is loud, but God is steady, that stress drains you, but trust strengthens you, and that no storm lasts forever. The moment you surrender your worry, you make room for strength. You make room for clarity. You make room for solutions you couldn't see when you were overwhelmed. Worry narrows your vision, but peace expands it. Peace allows you to see possibilities instead of problems, direction instead of dead ends, hope instead of heaviness. And that's why surrender is not a sign of weakness. It's an act of power, because sometimes the breakthrough begins not when the situation changes, but when your spirit does. There's a quiet lie that tries to take hold in seasons of financial hardship. The lie that what you're facing right now determines what your future will look like. When funds are tight and options feel limited, it's easy to assume the struggle is permanent. But your current situation is not your final story. God has a way of taking the chapters that feel the most painful and turning them into the ones that shape you the most deeply. What you're walking through right now might feel like limitation, but often it's preparation. You are being developed, stretched, refined, and strengthened in ways you won't fully understand until later. In moments of pressure, you might find yourself questioning your worth, your direction, or your decisions. You might feel embarrassed, frustrated, or even ashamed of where you are financially. But God never defines you by your present struggle. If anything, He uses struggle to reveal parts of your calling and character that comfort never could. The very things you think are holding you back may be the things God is using to move you forward. Sometimes the loss teaches you stewardship. Sometimes the delay teaches you discipline. Sometimes the disappointment teaches you discernment. None of it is wasted. Not one hard day, not one unanswered prayer, not one unexpected setback. And here's the truth you need to hold on to. Breakthroughs rarely begin in seasons that feel comfortable. Growth rarely happens in times of abundance. Transformation rarely comes when everything is stable. God often does His greatest work in the places where you feel the most fragile. So even if you feel stuck, you're actually evolving. Even if you feel behind, you are being positioned. Even if you feel like everything is falling apart, some things are actually falling into place. You are not defined by what you lack. You are defined by the God who leads you through it. Your future is bigger than this moment. Your story stretches beyond this chapter. What feels like an ending may actually be the pivot that redirects you towards something better than you imagined. so don't give your present the authority to prophesy your future. God holds the pen and He is still writing, because the struggle you're in today is shaping the strength you'll stand in tomorrow. Gratitude feels like a strange response when you're staring at bills, stretching dollars, and trying to make sense of what's next. But gratitude isn't about pretending everything is easy. It's about choosing to see what God is still doing, even when resources feel small. It's the quiet decision to acknowledge the blessings that remain, the strength you still have, the people who stand with you, the breath in your lungs, the opportunities that haven't disappeared. Gratitude doesn't erase hardship, but it does reframe it. It shifts your gaze from what's missing to what's present, from what's uncertain to what's unshakable. And that shift alone can restore a kind of inner stability that money could never buy. In tight seasons, fear tries to make you focus only on the lack. It wants you to magnify what you don't have until it overshadows everything you do have. But gratitude pushes back against that distortion. It brings balance. It reminds you that scarcity is not your whole story. Even in moments when everything feels reduced, gratitude points out that you are still supported, still guided, still loved by a God who sees the full picture. Gratitude doesn't deny reality. It strengthens you to face it. It keeps your heart from collapsing under the weight of worry. It protects your hope from shrinking down to the size of your current struggle. And here's the unexpected part. Gratitude often becomes the doorway to solutions. A grateful heart is calmer, clearer, and more open to creativity. When you aren't drowning in fear, you start noticing possibilities you missed before. You begin to see how far you've come instead of how far you still have to go. You start recognizing small wins that remind you progress is happening, even if you don't see the full breakthrough yet. Gratitude makes room for faith to grow because it keeps your heart soft enough to believe that better is still possible. You may not have everything you want right now, but gratitude helps you realize you still have enough to keep going, enough to keep believing, enough to keep building. And sometimes that realization alone is what gives you the courage to take the next step. Gratitude doesn't make your resources larger, it makes your strength deeper. And in seasons of financial hardship, that strength becomes everything. Because even when what's in your hands feels small, what God is doing in your heart is becoming powerful. There's a moment in every believer's journey when you look back over your life and realize something powerful. God has never failed you. Maybe the path wasn't what you expected. Maybe the answers came later than you wanted. Maybe the provision didn't arrive in the form you prayed for. But every time you thought you were at the end, He made a way. Every time you felt unsure, He steadied you. Every time you walked through a storm, He carried you farther than you realized. And when you stand in a new season of financial pressure, it's that memory, those moments of undeniable faithfulness that become your anchor. Breakthrough doesn't always begin with new money or new opportunities. Sometimes it begins with remembering. When you remind your heart of God's record, something shifts inside you. Fear loosens. Doubt weakens. Hope rises. The same God who showed up before is the same God who is showing up now. Even if you can't see how yet, He hasn't changed. His character hasn't shifted. His ability hasn't decreased. The God who provided for you in your lowest moment hasn't retired from being your provider. When you recall those past victories, you start to see your current challenge differently. You realize that the same hand that opened doors in seasons you didn't even know how to navigate is the same hand guiding you through this one. The same strength that brought you through disappointments, setbacks, and unexpected losses hasn't disappeared. God is not figuring out how to help you. He already has a plan. And every time you remember His faithfulness, you align yourself with that plan. You shift from panic to trust, from fear to confidence, from I don't see a way to I know He's about to make one. There's something deeply powerful about telling your own soul, He's never failed me yet. It's not denial. It's revelation. It's not naive. It's grounded. It's the realization that you've walked through worse than this, and somehow you're still standing. It's the awareness that if God carried you through battles that once felt impossible, then this moment is no different. He didn't bring you this far to abandon you now. He didn't sustain you this long only to watch you sink. His faithfulness did not expire just because your circumstances changed. Because when you remember His track record, you remember that the God who never failed you then is the God who will not fail you now. There comes a point in every struggle where you have to decide what voice you're going to follow. The voice of fear that says you're on your own, or the voice of faith that reminds you God is still working. You might be standing in a tight place right now, trying to stretch what feels like not enough, trying to make sense of a season that doesn't seem fair. But hear this, you are not standing in this moment alone. God has been weaving strength into you with every challenge, planting faith in you with every setback, and shaping purpose in you through every unanswered question. You've walked through seasons that should have broken you but didn't. You've survived nights you didn't think you could make it through. You've seen God step in at times when you had nothing left but hope, and even that hope felt small. Yet here you are, still breathing, still believing, still pushing forward. That's not an accident. That's evidence of grace. And now this season, this financial weight, this pressure, this uncertainty is not a sign of your end. It's a sign that breakthrough is near. God does some of His greatest work in the shadows before anything looks different on the surface. He strengthens you privately before He blesses you publicly. He prepares you quietly before He elevates you visibly. And the same God who guided you through every past battle has already prepared the path for this one. So lift your head, even if the weight feels heavy. Speak life over your situation, even if the numbers don't add up. Hold on to faith, even if fear tries to speak louder. Because your story is still unfolding, your miracle is still in motion, and your future is still held in the hands of a God who has never once failed you. And when the breakthrough comes, because it will, you'll look back on this moment not as the point where you fell apart, but as the point where you found a deeper strength, a deeper faith, and a deeper trust. Because this is not where your story ends. This is where your testimony begins.